Superman, the first official movie of the DC Cinematic Universe from director James Gunn, is finally here. I have a lot of thoughts and opinions on it, and I can't wait to share them with you in my review. Hello comic book movie fans, I'm Odd-Mando from Not of This Realm, where we talk about comic books, movies, TV, and action figures inspired by the realms of superheroes, sci-fi, horror, and fantasy. Welcome to the channel. If you're new here, we hope you enjoy the video and consider liking it and subscribing to Not of This Realm. Like many other people, Superman was my most anticipated movie of 2025. It is the first official movie of the new DC Cinematic Universe, which means it's got a lot riding on its shoulders for DC and the fans. The best indicator for Superman being a success is that it's directed by James Gunn, who has an excellent track record for making movies that do extremely well with audiences and at the box office. Is this enough for Superman and the new DCU to take flight, or does it crash land? Keep watching to find out what I think. I'm going to start my review by talking about Superman's greatest strengths, then I'll get into what didn't work as well in my opinion, what I think could have been done better, and my final thoughts. There will be spoilers when I get into the drawbacks of the movie, but I'll let you know beforehand in case you want to avoid them. What I think James Gunn does best, and is arguably the greatest strength of this movie, is the characters. In the Guardians of the Galaxy movies and the Suicide Squad, Gunn takes these relatively unknown characters and makes them popular among audiences because we can sympathize with them and connect with them on an emotional level. The only difference now is that he's taking Superman, a character that we all know and are familiar with, and sort of reacquainting us with him by exploring what makes him special. What we get is a Superman that's kind, thoughtful, and sees the best in humanity. James Gunn did a great job by selecting David Corenswet to play this part. He's so honest and sincere in his delivery that I can believe that this is a Superman that will fight a kaiju to save the people that are in danger, while at the same time is mindful of damage to property and is concerned about the well-being of creatures big and small, be it a squirrel or the kaiju itself. I also like how Corenswet approaches playing Superman. This is a Superman that's aware of how powerful he is, so he wears trunks on the outside of his suit to look as unthreatening as possible. I also noticed something that I haven't heard many people talk about. It's the voice he uses for Superman and the voice he uses as Clark at the Daily Planet. Rather than having a deeper voice as Superman and a nerdier voice as Clark Kent, Corenswet instead flips it. His Clark Kent voice is actually deeper,
so he didn't completely kick Superman's ass.
Pretty fair.
Whereas his Superman voice is friendlier, more welcoming.
Crypto!
And it goes to show the lengths that he goes to make Superman more approachable and disarming to those that he protects. Corenswet is also one of the most vulnerable and human interpretations of Superman that we've seen so far. He's a genuinely good and kind-hearted person, but he also gets upset whenever people misconstrue his good deeds. He has insecurities about what the trolls say about him online, and later on he's plagued by self-doubt. All of these traits contribute to him making him feel like a fully realized character that we can relate to and cheer for and see him overcome these obstacles. It's what sets his performance apart from others we've seen before. For example, Christopher Reeve is the gold standard when we think of Superman. He's kind, mature, and responsible with his powers. Henry Cavill's Superman was dark and brooding and almost lamented having superpowers. Here we have a Superman that takes joy in having superpowers and finds purpose in it, which makes the twist that we see later on in the movie that much more painful for him and the audience. My favorite parts of the movie are actually the quieter moments where Lois and Clark have genuine conversations about the events that have taken place because it gives us insight into their personalities and point of view of the world. The two of them have unbelievable chemistry in these scenes, but it's not as romantic as you may think. Their personalities can clash in these moments, and it leads to some inner conflict within Superman and Lois Lane as well. Rachel Brosnahan gives my favorite portrayal of Lois Lane. Granted, I don't think we've ever had a bad casting for her character. As I just mentioned, most of her moments with Clark are critical of his actions as Superman, but that's because she's inquisitive and has a passion for journalism, and you can see that in that first scene of them together. Yes, she's very pessimistic, but it's the personality trait I really connect with. But what I like most is that she's very aware of it and how it affects her relationship with Clark. She's a very complex and interesting character, and it's a testament to James Gunn's writing and Brosnahan's performance. And rounding out the central cast of characters is Nicholas Hoult as Lex Luthor. And his take on Lex is intense to say the least. What I mean by that is, he doesn't go over the top, he goes beyond over the top, and it works for this movie. Superman is such a good person in this movie that he needs a Lex Luthor that's this diabolical to balance the story out. Of the many things that I like about this movie, the stark contrast between these two characters is at the top of my list. On one hand, we have Superman, an alien with nearly godlike power who wants nothing but to use his abilities to serve mankind. On the other hand, we have Lex, a xenophobic narcissist who in his quest to eliminate Superman is willing to sacrifice as many people as it takes. In a majority of modern superhero movies, the villain or antagonist is usually someone who's been wronged, misunderstood, or has a twisted ideology or philosophy of how the world is or should be. It's not very often that we get a villain that's purely and unapologetically evil, but when we do, it's usually Lex Luthor. And the best part is, he's aware of how villainous he is, but he just doesn't care. If I had seen this Superman movie 20 or 15 years ago, I would say it was okay. I probably wouldn't have liked it as much. My biggest complaint would have been that Lex Luthor was too unrealistic. No one could possibly be this petty, malicious, and unhinged. Little did I know how wrong I was. One of the main concerns leading up to the release of Superman was the plethora of characters we saw in the trailers and that they might overshadow Superman's role in the movie. I can confidently say though that I didn't find that to be the case. Let's start with the Justice Gang. A lot of people thought they were going to be nothing more than cameos that would take the spotlight away from Superman, but I found them to be essential to the world building of this universe. Remember, metahumans have been around for 300 years by this time. When we first meet the Justice Gang during Superman's fight with the kaiju, they treat it more like a job or a promotional stunt and want to get it over with quickly. Superman, on the other hand, is more humane about how he wants to deal with the kaiju. It shows us that the superheroes of this world essentially function like sponsored teams that prioritize things like optics and efficiency over the good deeds themselves. Superman's beliefs and actions challenge this sentiment, and it sets the team up for their own story arc. Of the 3 Justice Gang members, Mr. Terrific is without a doubt my favorite. Eddie Gathegi does an outstanding job in the role. Mr. Terrific comes off as stoic, but at times he can also be outspoken, which leads to some great comedic moments. He also does my favorite action scene, which is probably the most James Gunn moment in the movie. I am beyond happy to see Eddie Gathegi given a chance to shine, especially after the poor treatment his character received in his first superhero movie, X-Men First Class. It was hugely disappointing to see a character as interesting as his, especially one that was given leadership potential, taken out so early in the movie just to show how powerful the villain was. It looks like things worked out in the end, since James Gunn is reportedly considering a spin-off TV series centered on Mr. Terrific. Then we have Nathan Fillion as Green Lantern Guy Gardner. He's not my favorite Green Lantern, but I'm just grateful Gunn included one in this movie, especially with someone like Fillion, who's actually voiced Green Lantern Hal Jordan, my second favorite Green Lantern, in several animated features. Fillion plays up the arrogance, immaturity, and temper of Gardner just enough to keep him from being an unlikable asshole. I think Nathan Fillion did a wonderful job, and I can't wait to see him return as Guy Gardner in the HBO Max series Lanterns with Hal Jordan and Jon Stewart in 2026. And then we have Isabella Merced as Hawkgirl. She doesn't get as much screen time as Mr. Terrific or Green Lantern, but what we do see of her counts. She even gets one of the most gratifying moments of the movie. Plus, I like her attitude whenever she's interacting with Green Lantern, and for the most part, I like her battle cry / screech. Skylar Gisondo is perfect as Jimmy Olsen, although I'm not too sure how I feel about the direction they took with his character. I love the casting of Pruitt Taylor Vince and Neva Howell as Jonathan and Martha Kent, Superman's adoptive Earth parents. They're authentic, and Vince in particular had a very moving scene where he's talking with Clark, and it shows us why the Kents were the perfect people to raise him. It's one of my favorite moments because it's touching but also serves the purpose of establishing the theme of the story. Yes, Superman is a politically charged movie. It's one of the many things I admire and respect about it. It has commentary on current events and topics. But moreover, it's about morality and how it can be influenced by our history, environment, and belief system. But being kind and doing good is a choice we make. It's a message that I think is the heart of both the movie and the character of Superman. In that aspect, I think James Gunn did an excellent job. With that being said, I do think there are some things Gunn didn't do as well in my opinion. I want to emphasize these are elements of the movie that didn't work for me because of my personal preference and why I think so. These are things that I felt could have been done better or weren't necessary in an otherwise great movie. I'll just go over them briefly and then go into more details with spoilers. 2 of the major issues I have with James Gunn's Superman movie are the pacing and the overstuffed plot. I get it. Gunn doesn't want to do an origin story we already know. He wants to dive right into this new universe, and I'm all for that. But I couldn't help feeling at times like I was dropped into the middle of a sequel to a movie that I've never seen. I love that Superman is absolutely a comic book movie, but you can have too much of a good thing. There are a lot of comic book and sci-fi elements here. Some of them I love and others not so much that sometimes take up valuable screen time and focus from the central plot of the story. Of course, we all know that Krypto is in the movie and I actually think he had an appropriate amount of screen time. I like the Superman robots, but they're really just there to deliver exposition about Superman's origin story that Gunn apparently said he was done with. There's not one but 2 kaijus or giant creatures. I like the first one, but the second was unnecessary in my opinion. I think it's great there are other superheroes like the Justice Gang, but there are also other meta-human threats like the Engineer and Ultraman. Then there are two huge plot twists. Most of us could guess what one of them was, but the other took me completely by surprise. Lex has a pocket universe that he uses as a prison for other metahumans, people that have criticized him or have interacted with Superman. And then there's Mr. Handsome, a CGI metahuman baby, a reference to Superman's hypno glasses, and a couple of big cameos. Some are more prominent than others, but my point is that introducing all of these elements takes priority away from the central plot and character arcs. Any one or two of the major elements could have been a secondary conflict or subplot in the movie. Remember, one of the central conflicts is Superman dealing with the political fallout of his involvement in Baravia's invasion of Giantpur. Exploring just one or two of the other concepts further would have resulted in a more focused and cohesive story. If the abundance of comic book elements worked for you, that's great. My take on these aspects of the movie should in no way get in the way of your enjoyment of it. I actually love the movie. These are just criticisms and ideas that I think would have made an amazing movie even better. Despite the loosely connected concepts and comic book elements, James Gunn still manages to write and direct a very good, entertaining movie that successfully kicks off a new cinematic universe for DC. Not many other directors could have pulled that off. Most importantly, Gunn understands what makes Superman special: his humanity, optimism, and kindness. I think Superman is absolutely worth watching in theaters. In fact, I've watched it twice and will hopefully watch it one or two more times before it ends its theatrical run. Have you seen Superman? What did you think? Do you agree with some of my thoughts on it, or am I off base? Is there something I missed but you didn't? I'd love it if you let me know in the comments below. Don't forget to give the video a thumbs up if you enjoyed it. If you're new to the channel and interested in comic books, movies, TV, and action figures inspired by the realms of superheroes, sci-fi, horror, and fantasy, then please consider subscribing to us. I'm Odd-Mando from Not of This Realm. This video was written by me and edited by the incredibly skilled Ostrovixen. Thank you so much for watching. We really do appreciate you taking the time to watch. Be safe and take care.